Hey guys, this is Kevin White with Fitness 360, and today's video is going to be showing you guys how to do a complete full body workout using nothing but a set of dumbbells and a stability ball. So I'm going to be working with our Fitness 360 member, friend, and figure competitor, Alexis Davis. We're going to be going through different types of exercises, working from the legs up, and we hope you guys enjoy it. Okay guys, we're going to start out working the legs, and first thing we're going to do is we're going to do just a regular squat. Now, there are different variations of the squat, all right? You can do squats with the feet pointed in straighter, go more of a narrow stance, wider stance, and of course those different angles and different stances are going to hit different parts of your legs. Now, regardless of what stance you take, your legs, your quads, your glutes, your hamstrings are all going to get hit. But if you go in more narrow, you're going to focus more on the quadricep. And if you go wider, you're going to get more recruitment in the hamstring, glutes, and so forth. So we're going to demonstrate both, okay? So Alexis is going to start with just a regular squat, basic squat with a regular stance. Notice how her feet are pointing slightly, rotating slightly out, not too much. But if they're pointing perfectly straight, she's going to have a tendency to pronate and go over the knee. It's going to hurt your knees. So we'll get her hips in there. Notice how she's arching her spine, and she's getting her hips back as she's descending on the negative. Now watch as she's descending on the negative. The negative part of the movement is going down on this movement. It's nice and slow and controlled. You don't want to just fall to the ground and try to bounce back up. You want to control the movement. That way you can focus in on contracting every muscle in the legs. Going down, you're squeezing the glutes, the hamstrings, and coming up, squeezing the quads. Now notice how she gets almost below parallel. That way she's driving with the hips and pushing through the heels. Really getting those quads and also getting the hamstrings and glutes in there. And also, if you notice little details like this, because Alexis is, she's an experienced athlete, so she knows to do this. She's not completely locking out her knees when she comes up. Why? When you lock your knees completely out, that's going to make your kind of sort of relax. Your quadriceps and legs are going to kind of relax. We want to keep your legs under tension the whole time. The idea is to put as much stress on the muscle as possible to get the most out of it. So when she's coming up, it looks like she's locking out, but she's not completely locking out her knees. Now we're gonna go, that was a little bit closer stance. We're gonna go and switch it up a little bit, go a little bit wider. Now notice she's going wider and she's rotating her hips out, but I say rotate, pushing her feet out, but you're actually rotating your hips out with the toes pointing out this way. Now, what's the difference between this one and the one she was just doing? Well, with a wider stance and the toes pointed out, you're going to get a little bit more hamstrings and glutes on this movement, as opposed to the more narrow stance, you're going to focus more on quads. So with a wide stance like this, she's getting a lot of hamstring and glute in this movement. Of course, she's getting a little bit of quadricep, but the focus is on the hamstring and glutes. So again, the recap, closer the stance, the more focus on the quadricep, wider the stance, the more focus on the hamstrings and glutes. All right guys, we just finished up squats. Now we're gonna move on to lunges. It's a different leg movement, and we're gonna show you guys how to do lunges properly. There's two different types of lunges we're gonna be demonstrating here. One is gonna be a short range lunge focusing on the quadricep, and the other one's gonna be a longer range where you step out further, and what that's gonna do is focus more on the hamstrings and glutes. So let's get started. Okay, Alexis is gonna demonstrate here with a short range. Now, notice that she's not stretching out as far. She's stepping out just a little bit in front of her. And what we're doing when she does that is going to be more emphasis on the quad, okay? Put more tension on the quad when she does that. And when she's stepping, she's kind of pronating. She kind of want to hit the ball of the feet a little bit and go down. She's going down. Notice how she controls the negative. Again, the negative is a very important part of the movement on any exercise. So notice how she's going down a little slower and then coming up. What that's doing is controlling the movement and keeping that tension on the muscles. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and those are the short range, focus on the quad, and we're gonna go switch it up and go out a little wider. So notice how on this lunge, she's stepping out really far out there. And when she's stepping out and going down, she's gonna be pressing more through the heel of the foot. When you press through the heel, All that tension goes right to the glutes and the hamstrings, okay? Very important. I know when you guys are looking at this, you're just watching the lunge out and go up and down, but there's a lot more to it. You want to control the negative. Again, get far out there, going down slow, and keeping all the tension on the heel, and that's going to put all the emphasis on the glutes and the hamstrings of this movement. Again, the close lunge, going to focus more on the quad, which is what we did earlier. This one, she's stepping out wider, focusing on the hamstrings and glutes. Okay guys, we just finished up with legs. Now we're going to move to the upper body, and we're going to start out working the chest. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a chest press, a dumbbell press on the stability ball. So enjoy. Okay. So if you watch Alexis, she sat on the stability ball and walked herself out until the stability ball is like, she feels it right in between the shoulder blades, okay? You don't want to go too low or too high on where your head's hanging off the end. Notice how, this is very important. Look at her lower back. She's arching her spine a little bit instead of trying to keep it flat. And what that does is it raises the rib cage up and puts the pecs in the position to be trained. Now on the negative part of the movement, on the press, coming down nice and slow and controlled. Very important. On this particular exercise, a lot of people make the mistake of dropping the weight really fast on the negative and trying to hurry up and push up the weight. The negative is a very important part. Is you got to come down nice and controlled, keeps tension on the pecs. And now notice how she's coming up and pressing all the way to the top. But notice how she's coming in instead of going straight up. If she were to go straight up, that's going to put a lot of torque on the shoulder joint. We don't want that. She wants to come in and squeeze the pecs at the top of the movement. Again, notice how her elbows, just like on her knees, it looks like she's locking them completely out, but she's not. She's just shy of locking out. And what happens is, if you lock your elbow completely out in this movement, your pecs go right into relax mode. We don't want that. We want to keep constant tension on the muscle. So she comes up on the positive part coming up, she's just shy of locking out that elbow, and then she's coming back down, keeping tension on the pecs. Very good form on that, okay? Now, while we're down here, we're going to go ahead and go right into a fly. Now, the press, when you're doing a chest press like we're just doing, you're incorporating a lot of secondary muscles. The anterior deltoids, the tricep, all come into play on the press. A fly is more of an isolation movement. It is an isolation movement. It isolates the pecs, so it takes the triceps out. You get a little bit of the anterior delt, a little bit, but more or less it's going to be all pec. And it's an isolation movement. And this movement, even though she's using the same amount of weight on this, you want to typically go, if you're pressing, you can typically press a little bit more because of the secondary muscles coming into play than you can the fly. But if you're using lightweight, you can go ahead and use this same weight for the fly. But again, one of the things I wanted to point out is notice how her elbows are slightly bent. They're not completely locked out, and they're not bent like all the way down here. It's got a nice little bit, just like if you're hugging someone, just a nice little bend in the elbow. And what that does is it keeps the tension off the tricep from being pressed out and puts it right in the pecs. Very good form on that. Okay guys, we just did our chest movements with presses and flies. Now we're going to move on to working the back. We're going to do two movements for you guys. We're going to do a one-arm dumbbell row, which is going to focus on the latissimus dorsi, which is the biggest part of the back. And we're going to do some bent over, overhand dumbbell rows with the palms facing back, with the elbows out. I'm going to focus more on the upper back around the rhomboids, teres, even the posterior delts. So let's get to work. Okay, now the way Alexis is going to do this, we're going to put one foot, whichever side she's working, say she's working the right side, she's going to put that left foot out and the right foot back, and that creates this space, this area where she can row in. She's supporting herself, putting her hand on her knee, and she can just rest her arm there. Either way works. Now, one thing you want to point out, a lot of people, in order to not pull with your biceps, which a lot of folks do when they're doing a row like this, is they pull it with the arms rather than the back. One of the things she's doing, if you notice, she's arching her spine. If her back was bowed over, you cannot contract your back muscles that way. You have to arch that back. Now notice how on the negative, again, negative is very important. We're descending very slow, getting a good stretch on the lats, arching the back, coming up and squeezing all the way. Now notice how she rotates the dumbbell in like that, getting the better contraction on the legs, on the back. And you can see right away that all this is right here on the outer part of that lat, which is exactly what we're trying to isolate. So just go ahead and work the left side to even it out. Again, creating that space with the right foot back, left foot back, right foot up, creating all this area so she can row in. The reason I say that, because a lot of people put their left foot up and then they're hitting their leg on their way down. Notice on the negative, she's going down slow and controlled. Always very important to control the movement going down that negative, seeing the lat stretch out nice and slow. Again, another very important part of this movement is arching that back, keeping it arched so that the lat muscles can contract, bring it all the way in toward the midline of the spine right there. Okay? Now, great. So we're gonna go, we did the one arm rows for the lats. Now we're gonna do the bent over dumbbell rows. Now, notice here, the palms are facing this way. They're facing back toward her. And what that does is on the other movement, if you notice, she had it facing, her palms facing her to the side, which is the lats. With the elbows out, the palms facing her back, she's focusing on the upper back. See, now notice how the rhomboids, the teres, even the posterior delts, and she's coming up, getting the elbows all the way up there, and at the end of that contraction, you can see the lower traps come into play. Very important part of this movement is you don't want to neglect the lower traps. You want to develop those. That's going to give a nice little detail in the upper back, and a lot of strength and a lot of support to the spine comes from that. It's not just a visual thing, it's also a supportive thing. To get good support on the spine, you want to make sure that you have strong back muscles and not neglecting that lower trap, which is part of the back as well. All right, guys, we just finished up doing back. Now we're going to work into the shoulders. We're going to hit the anterior deltoids and the lateral deltoids today. We're going to start out with a shoulder press for anterior delts, and then we're going to go right into the lateral raises to hit those lateral deltoids, okay? So Alexa's going to start out with lateral raises first. One thing I wanted to point out is her elbows. Notice how her elbows are higher than her wrist. What a mistake a lot of folks make is they bring their wrist up like this and their elbows are down. You don't want to do that. If you do that, it's going to go right into the joint as opposed to keeping it on that lateral deltoid. And notice when she's lifting the dumbbells up, instead of keeping them straight, they're tilted down like she's pouring a glass of water, and that just takes stress off the elbows. Again, you don't want it on the elbows, you want it at that lateral deltoid. So little details like that, the elbows up higher and the wrist turned down like she's pouring a glass of water. Very good, very good, okay. Now, going to go into shoulder presses. Now, a shoulder press is hitting the anterior delt, but some of the secondary muscles that come into play, of course, are the tricep, and then coming down on the negative, even the rear delts will come into play. But mostly it's the focus is going to be, the emphasis is going to be on the anterior delt, which is the front part of the deltoid. So notice one thing, how she's keeping elbows kind of tucked in tight, and she's not going straight up. She's coming up and in, like right over her head.
I did shoulders today.
We do. Do it. All right, guys, we just finished up shoulders. Now we're going to move into the last part of the workout. Is going to train some arms now, and biceps and triceps, okay? Bicep, 2 muscles, biceps in the front of the arm, and triceps, 3 muscles in the back of the arm. Okay, so we're going to get started with those. We're going to start with bicep curls, dumbbell curls. We're going to do alternating, doing one at a time, and then alternating to the other side. Now, notice how Alexis keeps her elbows in close to her body. Very important that keep everything tight. And she curls up. You notice her wrists are straight. They're not curled in. When you curl in the wrist, you're going to put a lot of tension on the form, and it's going to take away from the tension on the bicep. Remember, trying to work the biceps here, not the form. So excellent form she has with keeping her wrist straight. Another thing I want you guys to notice about her wrist is at the top of the movement, notice how she comes up and she's twisting that pinky, rotating it to the outside. Just that little bit of movement, rotating that pinky to the outside, puts an extra bit of contraction on that bicep. Very, very good form there. Now, Going to move into the triceps, and she's going to be doing a dumbbell, overhead dumbbell tricep extension with one dumbbell. You can do these with two dumbbells. Of course, you want to, if you use two, one each arm, you want to use a little bit lighter weight, but she's going to do them with both here. Now, what this is going to work, now you're going to hit all the tricep. It's an elbow extension. You're going to hit all parts of the tricep, but it seems that this particular movement is going to emphasize on the long head of the tricep, and that's the biggest part of the tricep, is that long head. And that long head is the part of the tricep that we don't hit a lot in everyday movements, because how many times have you guys done anything where you pick something up over your head like this? Well, not much, but you push out a lot and that you hit your triceps that way. But this is really emphasizing on the long head of the tricep. Notice how she's coming down nice, slow, and controlled. The elbows are in tight, close. She's not letting them come out too far. She's keeping them in, just like picturing like a rope is tied to her elbows, and keeping her elbows tight inside like that. Good control and negative. Remember, negative, always slower and controlled than positive. And then on the elbows again, one thing I want to point out, notice how she's not locking out again. She's keeping attention on that tricep by not locking completely out. That's really good. Good form. All right, guys, that concludes our full body dumbbell workout. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And just to recap on what we talked about during the videos is to make sure, always make sure that you start out with a really light weight to warm up. Warm up the joints really good. Get your nervous system used to the movement before you start working into heavier weights. If you have to, work with just your body weight and then work your way up. It's very important. A lot of people want to start off heavy and they end up getting injured. So make sure you're warmed up properly. Make sure you start off with really light weight. Do like a lot of reps on the movement just to get your nervous system woke up, and then work into your working sets, increasing the weight slowly as you.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's going to feel awkward at first, especially if you're not used to being under any type of weight. It may feel a little wobbly, but that's normal. And then after doing it a few times, then your body's going to start having that muscle memory, and then it'll just. Right,
absolutely. And we were talking about earlier, just the kind of recap on it, form. We talked about how important form is, and
extremely important.
Yeah. So just like a lot of things that I was kind of talking about as she was performing the movements, make sure that you listen to that and follow those instructions carefully, because everyone always talks about, okay, when you gotta lift weights, you gotta have proper form. It almost sounds cliche, right? We hear it all the time, but it's very important.
Yeah. And form is more important to me than the amount of weight that you can lift. That doesn't matter. It's really about the form.
Absolutely. I mean, if you can make a 5-pound dumbbell feel like a 60-pound dumbbell, then you're doing it right. Because remember, it's not about the weight. Your body doesn't know what 60 pounds or 10 pounds is. It knows what the stimulus is that you're giving it. And it's all about the tension, right? It's all about the tension and the stimulus that you're putting upon your nervous system and the skeletal muscle tissue. And that's what's going to come into play. And again, little things. Foot placement, pressing through the heels, not locking your elbows out. All those little detail things are crucial in terms of getting results and preventing injury. That's the name of the game, is getting results and without getting injured. So.
And also, I would just like to add, whenever you are training at home, make sure you do, like we did today, a full body workout. Because if you lack in any area, that's how you're going to get injuries.
Yeah. And we were hoping, one of the things that I was hoping to accomplish with this video is it's something, if you notice, it's just a couple of sets of dumbbells, right? And it's just something that you can do if you're traveling. Let's say if you're at a hotel that doesn't really have, a workout area or a gym. I've been to hotels that most of them have gyms. A lot of times they just have cardio or something. This is something you can do at home by yourself, when you're traveling. So it's just, if you don't have access to a gym, we wanted to kind of show you guys how to do this. That way, you could do a full body workout, again, just using dumbbells and your body weight. So.
Exactly.
Anything else?
I think that's good.
All right. Well, thanks again, guys, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Again, subscribe to our channel. If you have any questions or comments, please do so below, and then let us know what you think. We want your feedback on this. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys later.